Most people are not weak because they lack strength. They are weak because they cannot pause. They react before they think. They speak before they see. They move before they understand, and every reaction hands their power to someone else. The strong do not rush. They do not explain. They do not chase. They observe. They wait. They decide. This audiobook will teach you one brutal truth. If you react, you are controlled. If you observe, you are free. Reaction is not emotion. Reaction is not emotion. Reaction is loss of authority. Most people don't understand this. They think reacting means being real. They think reacting means being honest. They think reacting means standing up for themselves. It doesn't. Reaction is obedience in disguise. The moment someone can pull an emotion out of you on demand, they own you. Your anger, your excitement, your fear, your need to explain. Whoever triggers you controls you. That's the rule. That's the law. That's the game being played, whether you like it or not. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are being controlled all day long without realizing it. A comment ruins their mood. A message spikes their heart rate. A delay creates panic. A disrespectful tone demands an immediate response. That response feels justified. But it isn't power. It's submission. Asterisk. The first one to react is the first one to lose. Ask. Say it again. The first one to react is the first one to lose. Because reaction hands initiative away. Reaction puts you on defense. Reaction puts you inside their frame instead of your own. You have a choice, always. You can react, or you can observe. And those two paths lead to completely different lives. Weak people react because they confuse emotion with strength. They believe speaking immediately proves confidence. They believe defending themselves proves worth. They believe silence means weakness. That belief destroys them. Strong people know something different. Strong people understand that silence is leverage. Delay is dominance. Control is quiet. They don't rush to correct. They don't rush to explain. They don't rush to show how much they know. They wait. That's the key. Waiting is not passivity. Waiting is not passivity. Waiting is positioning. When you react instantly, you give the other person information. You show them where you're sensitive. You show them what matters to you. You show them what can move you. And once someone knows that, they can push it again. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their approval to pause. You don't need their validation to remain silent. But most people react because they are addicted to relief. They feel pressure. They feel tension. They feel misunderstood. So they react to release that pressure. And in doing so, they trade long-term authority for short-term comfort. It's not about honesty. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about emotion. It's about control. It's not about proving. It's about positioning. That's the key. Look at real life. In conversations, the reactive person talks more. The controlled person listens more. In conflict, the reactive person escalates. The controlled person slows things down. In leadership, the reactive person explains every move. The controlled person lets outcomes speak. In negotiations, the reactive person fills silence. The controlled person lets silence do the work, and silence always wins. Why? Because silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty shifts power. When you don't react, people don't know where they stand with you. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what you'll do next. That makes them careful. Reaction makes you predictable. Observation makes you dangerous. The first one to react is the first one to lose. Weak people react because they feel watched. Strong people observe because they are watching. That difference changes everything. You have to understand this deeply. Most provocations are not accidents. They are tests. Tests of emotional control. Tests of boundaries. tests of ego, and every time you react automatically, you fail the test. You show that you can be moved. You show that you can be rushed. You show that you can be pulled off center. You have a choice. You can pass the test, or you can keep reacting and wondering why people don't respect you. That's the key. Now let's get practical. What does discipline look like in real time? It looks like pausing before speaking, even when you feel justified. It looks like breathing instead of responding immediately. It looks like asking yourself one question: do I gain power by reacting right now? Most of the time, the answer is no. And when the answer is no, you wait. You don't need to win every moment. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. You don't need to respond to every tone, look, or message. Power comes from selectivity. Strong people choose when to engage. Weak people feel compelled. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. Say it again. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. Confidence without discipline is noise. Discipline creates authority, and authority doesn't rush. When you stop reacting, something interesting happens. People start revealing themselves. They talk more. They explain more. They justify more. Because your silence creates pressure, not on you, but on them. That's leverage. You don't need to threaten. You don't need to intimidate. You don't need to dominate. You just need to stop reacting. Asterisk. The first one to react is the first one to lose. Ask. Let this sink in. If someone can control your emotions, they control your behavior. If they control your behavior, they control your outcomes. And if you want a different life, you need different control. This chapter is not telling you to suppress emotion. It's teaching you to own it. Feel whatever you feel, privately. Decide what you show, intentionally. That's strength. That's maturity. That's power. You have a choice. Always react and give power away, or observe and take it back. And once you stop reacting, you unlock the next level. Because observation is not passive. It's a weapon. You've learned that reaction is submission. Now it's time to learn how observation turns into control. Observation is not passivity. Observation is positioning. Most people misunderstand this. They think watching means waiting. They think waiting means weakness. They think power belongs to the loud, the fast, the aggressive. It doesn't. Power belongs to the one who sees first. Observation creates distance. Distance creates clarity. And clarity creates power. That's the chain. When you step back emotionally, you step up strategically. When you slow down mentally, you speed up outcomes. I don't rush. I read the room. Say it again. I don't rush. I read the room. That sentence alone can change how people experience you. Weak people rush because they are uncomfortable with uncertainty. Strong people observe because they know uncertainty reveals information. And information is leverage. You have a choice. You can rush to be understood, or you can observe to understand. One makes you visible. The other makes you dangerous. That's the key. Observation means watching how people behave when they think no one is paying attention. It means listening to what they emphasize, repeat, and avoid. It means noticing timing, tone, and emotional patterns. Strong people don't guess. They gather data. They don't act on feelings alone. They act on patterns, because patterns don't lie. When you observe, you notice who speaks to fill silence and who speaks with purpose. You notice who reacts emotionally and who stays centered. You notice who needs approval and who doesn't. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You don't need their permission to take your time. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to withhold a reaction. Most people rush because they feel pressure, not because the moment requires speed. That's the difference. It's not about intelligence. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about cleverness. It's about patience. That's the key. Let's talk real-world behavior. In meetings, the observer speaks last, or not at all. They let everyone else show their position first. They collect opinions before revealing intent. In conversations, the observer asks fewer questions but listens more deeply. They don't interrupt. They don't compete for airtime. In conflict, the observer slows everything down. They let emotions surface without absorbing them. Why? Because emotional people leak information, and information creates advantage. I don't rush. I read the room. When you observe instead of react, people underestimate you. They think you're quiet. They think you're passive. They think you're unsure. That's fine. Underestimation is one of the greatest advantages you can have. Strong people don't correct assumptions prematurely. They let others reveal their hand. That's discipline. You have to train this. Observation is a skill, and like any skill, it requires restraint. You must resist the urge to speak first. Resist the urge to explain. Resist the urge to prove. You don't need their permission to remain silent. Say it again. You don't need their permission. Silence while observing is not absence. It's pressure, and pressure changes behavior. When you stop rushing, others start showing. They overtalk. They justify. They contradict themselves, all because you didn't fill the space. That's the weapon. Distance gives you perspective. Perspective gives you options. Reactive people have one option: respond now. Observers have many. That's the difference between being emotional and being effective. You have a choice: react immediately or observe until the right moment appears. That moment always comes if you're patient enough to see it. Strong people wait for alignment. Weak people force timing. It's not about boldness. It's about precision. That's the key. Now, let's talk about action. Observation does not mean inaction forever. It means delayed action, informed action. When observers act, they move decisively, no hesitation, no explanation, because they already saw the outcome before moving. This is why strong people look calm under pressure. They aren't improvising. They already studied the terrain. You can do this starting now. The next time you enter a room, say nothing for the first few minutes. Watch who seeks control. Watch who seeks approval. Watch who listens. The next time you feel rushed to respond, pause for 3 breaths. Let the impulse pass. Let clarity rise. The next time someone provokes you, don't meet them where they are. Step back mentally. Observe. That pause is where power lives. I don't rush. I read the room. Repeat it until it becomes instinct. Because instinct is what fails under pressure. Training is what holds. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. And discipline always outperforms emotion. When you master observation, you stop being surprised. You stop being manipulated. You stop being pulled into unnecessary battles. You become selective. And selectivity is authority. You're no longer reacting to the environment. The environment starts reacting to you. That's the shift. You've learned that reaction is submission. You've learned that observation is a weapon. Now there's one more layer. Because observation without restraint leaks power. To fully own this weapon, you must learn to control your output. Your words, your expressions, your explanations. You mastered distance. Now it's time to master silence. Fast emotions create slow progress. Read that again. Fast emotions create slow progress. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they move too fast emotionally. They decide while angry. They speak while excited. They commit while afraid. And then they spend months fixing damage that took seconds to create. That's not bad luck. That's poverty, emotional poverty. Slow mind, sharp outcome. Say it again. Slow mind, sharp outcome. Strong people understand something. Weak people ignore. Speed is not power. Control is. Anger, excitement, fear, all feel urgent. All feel justified. All distort perception when unchecked. That's the key. Emotion narrows vision. Discipline widens it. You have a choice. You can let emotion drive your timing, or you can slow the mind and protect the outcome. Only one leads to leverage. Weak people chase emotional relief. Strong people delay emotion to protect results. It's not about passion, it's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about feeling more. It's about reacting less. That's the key. Let's break this down. Anger convinces you that force is required. Excitement convinces you that speed is necessary. Fear convinces you that avoidance is safety. All three lie. Anger makes you aggressive when you need precision. Excitement makes you commit before you assess. Fear makes you retreat when you need presence. And every time you obey those emotions, you pay interest. Lost trust. Burned bridges. Missed timing. Damaged reputation. That's emotional debt. Slow mind. Sharp outcome. Strong people regulate speed before they regulate action. They don't ask, "How do I feel?" They ask, "What does this require?" That's the difference. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to think. Most people feel rushed because they are emotionally dependent. They feel pressure to respond, pressure to commit, pressure to prove. That pressure is internal, not external. You have a choice. You can obey the feeling, or you can override it. That override is discipline, and discipline compounds. Look at high performers. They are not emotional sprinters. They are emotional long-distance runners. They conserve energy. They manage timing. They don't burn momentum on impulse, because impulse is expensive. Fast decisions feel powerful in the moment. But power isn't how it feels, it's what it produces. That's the key. Now let's get practical. The next time you feel urgency, do nothing for 60 seconds, not because you're unsure, but because you're in control. Breathe. Slow the mind. Widen perception. Ask one question: what happens if I wait? In most cases, clarity increases. Options appear. Emotion fades. That's the advantage. Weak people think speed equals confidence. Strong people know speed without clarity equals regret. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. Say it again. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. This applies everywhere. In relationships, emotional speed creates misunderstandings. In business, emotional speed creates bad deals. In leadership, emotional speed creates instability. Calm timing creates trust. Measured responses create authority. Slow mind, sharp outcome. When you slow down internally, you become harder to manipulate, because manipulation relies on urgency. It relies on pressure. It relies on emotion. Remove emotional speed, and manipulation fails. You have a choice. Let others rush you or make them wait. Waiting is strength. Strong people are not in a hurry to be understood. They are in control of their timing. And timing is everything. Emotion says, now. Discipline says, when ready. That's the key. Now understand this. Slowing down does not make you passive. It makes you precise. When disciplined people move, they move clean. No overcorrection. No apologies. No apologies. No chaos. Because they already paid the price in patience. Weak people pay later. Strong people pay up front. With restraint, you don't need their permission to think clearly. You don't need their permission to choose timing. You don't need their permission to protect your outcome. The world rewards results, not emotional expression. That's uncomfortable for most people, but it's reality. Fast emotion feels alive. Slow discipline builds power, and power compounds quietly. Slow mind, sharp outcome. Make that your standard. Slow your reactions. Slow your commitments. Slow your responses. Speed will still be there when you need it. But clarity only appears when you pause. You've learned that reaction is submission. You've learned that observation is a weapon. Now you've learned that emotional speed is poverty. The next step is learning what happens when you remove emotional noise entirely. Because when you stop reacting and stop rushing, something else emerges. Silence. And silence changes everything. Silence is not empty. Silence is pressure. Most people are terrified of it. They rush to fill it. They explain. They justify. They overshare. And in doing so, they expose themselves. When you don't react, insecure people panic. That's not theory. That's observation. Because insecure people need feedback. They need reassurance. They need resistance. Silence gives them none. And without feedback, their mind starts to race. They talk more. They reveal motives. They contradict themselves. Let them talk. I'm learning. Say it again. Let them talk. I'm learning. Strong people understand this early. You don't need to dominate a conversation to control it. You just need to stop reacting. That's the key. Silence forces others to fill the gap, and most people fill it poorly. They say too much. They say the wrong thing. They say what they didn't plan to say. Because silence removes their anchor. You have a choice. You can rush to speak and stabilize them, or you can stay silent and let the truth surface. Only one gives you power. Weak people talk to reduce tension. Strong people stay quiet to increase clarity. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about being intimidating. It's about being controlled. That's the key. Look at real situations. In arguments, silence unsettles the emotional person. They escalate. They repeat themselves. They reveal insecurity. In negotiations, silence makes the other side negotiate against themselves. They lower demands. They offer more. They explain weaknesses. In leadership, silence signals certainty. People follow those who don't need to convince. Let them talk. I'm learning. Most people speak because they feel exposed. Strong people let others feel exposed instead. You don't need their permission to remain silent. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to withhold a response. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is observation with restraint. That restraint is rare, and rarity creates authority. When you stay silent, people project onto you. They assume, they guess, they reveal what they fear. That projection is information, and information is leverage. That's the key. But understand this clearly, silence only works if it's intentional. Silent weakness is different from silent strength. Silent weakness is fear. Silent strength is control. The difference is internal posture. You're not quiet because you're unsure. You're quiet because you're watching. You're not quiet because you're intimidated. You're quiet because you don't need to rush. Let them talk. I'm learning. This discipline takes practice. Your ego will want to jump in. Your emotions will want relief. Your mind will want to explain. Don't. You have a choice. You can protect your ego, or you can protect your position. Only one pays. Most people sabotage themselves by over-explaining. They think clarity requires more words. It doesn't. Clarity requires less emotion. Silence filters emotion out of the room. And when emotion drops, truth rises. That's the key. Try this. Next time someone challenges you, don't respond immediately. Hold eye contact. Breathe. Say nothing. Watch what happens. They will talk. They always do. And what they say next is usually what they didn't want to reveal. Next time you feel misunderstood, don't rush to correct. Let silence do the work. People reveal more when they're uncomfortable. Strong people are comfortable with discomfort. It's not about being cold. It's about being disciplined. Say it again. It's not about being cold. It's about being disciplined. Silence also protects you. Words can be used against you. Emotions can be exploited. Reactions can be weaponized. Silence gives nothing away. That's why powerful people speak less and mean more. They don't waste words. They don't explain themselves to the unqualified. They don't fill space just to be heard. They wait. Let them talk. I'm learning. When you adopt this mindset, your presence changes. People become careful around you. They think before speaking. They choose words more deliberately, not because you threatened them, but because your silence commands attention. That's authority. You don't need their permission to be selective. You don't need their permission to conserve energy. You don't need their permission to stay centered. Silence is a filter. It filters noise. It filters insecurity. It filters manipulation. And what remains is clarity. You've learned that reaction is submission. You've learned that observation is a weapon. You've learned that emotional speed is poverty. Now you've learned that silence exposes weakness in others. But there's another layer. Silence is powerful, but only when you know when to speak. Because restraint without timing becomes distance, and distance without intent becomes isolation. To complete this discipline, you must learn when to engage and when not to. That brings us to the next lesson. Not every signal deserves a response. Say it slowly. Not every signal deserves a response. Most people live like open doors. Every knock gets answered. Every message gets attention. Every opinion gets emotional energy. And that's why they feel exhausted, distracted, and powerless. Messages, insults, opinions, requests, most of them are not priorities. They are tests. Tests of your availability. Tests of your boundaries. Tests of your self-control. And every time you respond automatically, you fail the test. Asterisk, I decide what deserves me. Asterisk, I decide again. I decide what deserves me. That sentence is authority. Weak people react because they feel obligated. Strong people respond only when it aligns. You have a choice. You can let the world pull you in every direction, or you can choose where your attention goes. That's the key. Attention is currency. And most people are broke because they spend it on everything. Responding to everything trains others to interrupt your focus. It teaches them that your time is accessible. It teaches them that your energy is available on demand. That's not generosity. That's lack of discipline. It's not about kindness. It's about boundaries. Say it clearly. It's not about being rude. It's about being disciplined. That's the key. Look at your daily life. How many messages did not require an immediate reply? How many opinions didn't need correction? How many provocations weren't worth engaging? Most of them. But you responded anyway. Why? Because silence feels uncomfortable. Because ignoring feels wrong. Because you fear being misunderstood. That fear costs you. Every unnecessary response fragments your focus. Every emotional reply drains energy. Every impulse reaction lowers your position. Asterisk, I decide what deserves me. Strong people don't live reactively. They live selectively. They don't ask, can I respond? They ask, should I? That question changes everything. You don't need their permission to ignore distractions. You don't need their permission to delay replies. You don't need their permission to protect your focus. Focus is not negotiable, and people who respect you will feel it. People who don't will test it. That's fine. Tests reveal intent. Messages are often bait. Insults are often hooks. Opinions are often invitations to waste time. You don't need to accept every invitation. That's the key. When you respond less, people adjust. They stop interrupting. They stop pushing. They stop assuming access. Because boundaries train behavior. Weak people explain boundaries. Strong people enforce them quietly. It's not about explaining yourself. It's about consistency. Say it again. It's not about explaining. It's about consistency. Now let's get practical. Before responding to anything, ask 3 questions. Does this align with my priorities? Does this require my energy right now? Does responding increase my position? If the answer is no, you wait. You don't owe immediacy. You owe intention. That pause is power. Asterisk, I decide what deserves me. Asterisk, most people think being responsive makes them valuable. It doesn't. Being selective makes you respected. When you stop responding to noise, your responses carry weight. People listen more closely. They choose words carefully. They think before reaching out, because scarcity creates value, and attention, when controlled, becomes authority. You have a choice: be accessible to everything or be effective at what matters. Only one builds a strong life. This applies to digital life too. Notifications are not commands. Messages are not emergencies. Opinions are not obligations. Turn off what doesn't serve. Delay what distracts. Ignore what weakens focus. That's discipline. It's not about being busy. It's about being intentional. That's the key. When you stop responding to everything, something powerful happens. You regain mental clarity. You regain emotional stability. You regain momentum. Your life stops being reactive. It starts being directed. And direction is strength. I decide what deserves me. Make that your standard. Not everything deserves a reply. Not everyone deserves access. Not every moment deserves your energy. Strong people protect their inner space because that space is where decisions are made, and decisions shape destiny. You've learned that reaction is submission. You've learned that observation is a weapon. You've learned that emotional speed is poverty. You've learned that silence exposes weakness. Now you've learned selectivity. But there's another level, because deciding what deserves you is only half the equation. The next level is deciding when. Timing. Delay. Control over response speed. That's where discipline becomes dominance. You mastered restraint. Now it's time to master timing. Delay is not avoidance. Delay is dominance over impulse. Most people hear the word delay and think hesitation. They think fear. They think uncertainty. They're wrong. Delay is strength in its quietest form. Powerful people pause not because they're unsure, but because they're precise. That's the key. I respond on my schedule. Say it again. I respond on my schedule. That sentence alone separates leaders from followers. Weak people respond when pushed. Strong people respond when ready. You have a choice. You can let urgency control your timing, or you can control urgency. Only one leads to authority. Impulse is the enemy of precision. Impulse feels urgent. Precision requires space. Delay creates that space. When you delay, you insert yourself between stimulus and response. You interrupt the automatic. You reclaim control. That pause is power. It's not about being slow. It's about being exact. Say it clearly. It's not about speed. It's about discipline. That's the key. Look at how people lose power. They reply instantly. They decide emotionally. They commit under pressure. They think speed shows confidence. It doesn't. Speed without clarity is weakness wearing confidence as a mask. Powerful people understand this. They pause before responding to messages. They pause before agreeing. They pause before reacting. Not because they're confused, but because they're measuring. Measuring consequences, measuring leverage, measuring timing. I respond on my schedule. When you delay, others feel it. They notice. They wait. They adjust. Because delay reverses pressure. Instead of you feeling rushed, they do. That's dominance. You don't need their permission to take time. You don't need their permission to think. You don't need their permission to choose timing. Time is yours. Most people give it away without realizing it. They feel obligated to reply. They feel guilty for pausing. They feel anxious about silence. That anxiety is weakness, and weakness invites control. You have a choice: respond immediately and stay reactive, or delay and take command. That's the key. Delay also filters intent. People who respect you will wait. People who want control will push. That tells you everything. Urgency is often a tactic. Pressure is often manipulation. Delay exposes both. Strong people are comfortable disappointing expectations. Weak people are addicted to approval. It's not about being liked, it's about being disciplined. Say it again. It's not about being liked, it's about being disciplined. Now let's get practical. The next time you receive a message, don't open it immediately. The next time you feel pushed for an answer, ask for time. The next time you feel emotional urgency, do nothing. Let the feeling pass. Emotions peak and fade. Decisions made at the peak are usually wrong. Delay lets emotions settle. Clarity rises in the space it creates. I respond on my schedule. This discipline changes how people treat you. They stop expecting instant access. They stop demanding immediacy. They stop testing boundaries. Because delay trains respect, you are teaching people how to treat you with every response time. Fast replies signal availability. Delayed replies signal priority. That's not arrogance. That's structure. Strong people structure their availability. Weak people surrender it. That's the key. Delay also strengthens internal control. You stop being driven by impulse. You stop being hijacked by emotion. You start choosing deliberately. That internal shift is everything. Because once you control timing, you control outcomes. It's not about avoiding responsibility. It's about choosing when to engage. Avoidance hides. Delay prepares. Say it clearly. Avoidance hides. Delay prepares, and preparation is power. You don't need to announce your delay. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to justify it. Silence and patience do the work for you. I respond on my schedule. Make that your rule. Not today's schedule, not their schedule. Yours, because the person who controls timing controls the interaction, and the person who controls interaction controls the outcome. You've learned that reaction is submission. You've learned that observation is a weapon. You've learned that emotional speed is poverty. You've learned that silence exposes weakness. You've learned that not every signal deserves a response. Now you've learned delay. But there's something deeper. Delay is not just external, it's internal. It's the ability to sit with discomfort without acting, to feel emotion without obeying it. That's mastery. And mastery requires ego control. Because ego hates delay. Ego wants to prove. Ego wants to respond now. To go further, you must silence ego itself. You mastered timing. Now it's time to master the voice inside that wants to defend. Ego reacts. Authority observes. But difference decides everything. Most people don't lack intelligence. They lack ego control. Ego needs to be seen. Ego needs to be heard. Ego needs to prove. Authority doesn't. Authority needs to understand. That's the key. The urge to defend is the ego begging for validation. Every time you feel the need to explain yourself, correct someone, or justify your position. That's ego. And ego is loud. Authority is quiet. I don't defend, I demonstrate. Say it again. I don't defend, I demonstrate. Weak people defend their worth. Strong people let results speak. You have a choice. You can feed the ego, or you can build authority. Only one compounds. Ego reacts because it feels threatened. Authority observes because it knows its position. Ego wants immediate relief. Authority wants long-term leverage. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. That's the key. Look at how ego shows up. Someone questions you. Ego responds fast. Someone doubts you, ego explains. Someone disrespects you, ego escalates. That reaction feels powerful in the moment, but it leaks authority. Why? Because explaining puts you beneath the listener. Defending puts you on trial. Reacting puts you inside their frame. Authority never enters the frame of the unqualified. Authority observes. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their permission to withhold explanation. You don't need their permission to let misunderstanding exist. Misunderstanding is not danger. Ego just treats it like one. That's the key. Strong people allow others to be wrong about them. Weak people panic when misunderstood. Why? Because ego is fragile. Authority is grounded. I don't defend, I demonstrate. Demonstration requires patience. Results require time. And ego hates both. Ego wants instant recognition. Authority plays long games. That's why ego burns bridges. Authority builds reputations. Now let's get practical. The next time someone challenges you, say nothing. Observe tone. Observe intent. Ask yourself one question. Do I need to prove something, or do I already know who I am? That pause is discipline. If you feel the urge to defend, that's your signal to stop, because the moment you defend, you've already lost position. Authority doesn't argue facts with emotional people. Authority doesn't compete for validation. Authority doesn't chase agreement. Authority moves forward. I don't defend, I demonstrate. That means letting time reveal truth, letting consistency reveal strength, letting outcomes settle debates. Words convince weak minds. Results silence everyone. That's the key. Ego wants credit. Authority wants effectiveness. Ego wants applause. Authority wants alignment. It's not about being right. It's about being effective. Say it again. It's not about being right. It's about being effective. Most people sabotage authority by over-explaining. They think explanation equals clarity. It doesn't. Explanation invites judgment. Demonstration creates respect. You don't need their permission to move without explaining. You don't need their permission to let silence stand. You don't need their permission to act without approval. Strong people are comfortable being questioned. Weak people are addicted to being affirmed. That addiction costs them power. You have a choice. Defend your ego or protect your authority. Only one grows. When you stop defending, something shifts. People stop testing you. They stop poking. They stop challenging, because there's nothing to push against. Ego gives resistance. Authority gives nothing, and nothing is hard to attack. That's the key. Now understand this. Authority is not arrogance. Authority is restraint. Arrogance reacts. Authority observes. Arrogance explains. Authority executes. Arrogance talks. Authority moves. I don't defend. I demonstrate. Make that your standard. No emotional debates. No reactive explanations. No defensive posture. Only action. Only consistency. Only results. That's discipline. And discipline always outperforms ego. You've learned to control reaction. You've learned to observe. You've learned to slow emotional speed. You've learned silence. You've learned silensitivity. You've learned delay. Now you've learned ego control. But there's another layer. Authority doesn't just observe ego, it controls environment. Because chaos feeds ego, and order feeds authority. To fully step into control, you must master calm under pressure. Because pressure reveals who you really are. You mastered ego. Now it's time to master stillness. Chaos is loud. Control is quiet. That contrast tells you everything you need to know. Most people mistake noise for power. They confuse volume with authority. They think the one who reacts hardest is the one in control. They're wrong. Chaos screams, control watches, that's the key. When pressure hits, chaos speeds up. Control slows down. When uncertainty appears, chaos panics. Control steadies. You have a choice. You can match the chaos, or you can become the calm inside it. Only one creates dominance. Strong people are not calm because life is easy. They are calm because they are disciplined. It's not about temperament. It's about training. Say it clearly. It's not about personality. It's about discipline. That's the key. Chaos is emotional overflow. Raised voices, fast movements, impulsive decisions. Control is measured. Still posture, even tone, deliberate action, and people feel the difference immediately. In a room full of noise, the quiet presence stands out. Why? Because calm under pressure signals certainty. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their permission to lower your voice. You don't need their permission to slow the pace. Calm is not weakness. Calm is command. When you remain composed while others spiral, you become the reference point. People look to you. They adjust to you. They follow you. That's authority. Chaos reacts to environment. Control shapes it. That's the key. Look at real-world pressure. In emergencies, the calm person takes charge. In conflict, the calm person dictates direction. In negotiations, the calm person sets terms. Not because they're louder, but because they're steadier. Stillness is strength. Say it again. Stillness is strength. Most people lose control because they mirror chaos. Someone raises their voice, they raise theirs. Someone panics, they absorb it. Someone rushes, they comply. That mirroring is weakness. You have a choice. Absorb chaos or neutralize it. Neutralizing chaos starts internally. Slow your breathing. Lower your voice. Reduce your movements. The body leads the mind. That's the key. When your body is calm, your mind follows. When your mind is calm, your decisions sharpen. Chaos blurs perception. Control sharpens it. It's not about suppressing emotion, it's about regulating expression. Say it clearly. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about regulating expression. That's discipline. Now let's get practical. The next time pressure rises, do 3 things. Slow your breath. Slow your speech. Slow your movements. This immediately separates you from chaos. People will feel it before they understand it. They'll stop talking as fast. They'll look to you. They'll wait. That pause is power. You don't need their permission to set the tempo. You don't need their permission to change the energy. You don't need their permission to be calm. Calmness is contagious when it's real. Fake calm cracks under pressure. Trained calm holds. That's the difference. Chaos demands reaction. Control invites observation. And observation always wins, because while chaos burns energy, control conserves it. Energy conserved becomes leverage. That's the key. Notice who thrives in chaos. Insecure people, ego-driven people. Those who need attention. Chaos gives them space to perform, but it also exposes them, because chaos has no direction. Control does. When you stay quiet and steady, chaotic people reveal patterns. They repeat, they contradict, they expose fear. You don't need to confront it, just observe. Chaos collapses on its own. Stillness is strength. This discipline also protects your reputation. People remember how you behave under pressure. They forget words. They remember composure. Losing control costs credibility. Maintaining calm builds trust. That's not opinion. That's reality. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being unshakable. Say it again. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being unshakable. Unshakable people intimidate without trying. because they cannot be moved easily. Chaos tries to provoke. Control refuses, and refusal drains chaos of fuel. You have a choice: feed the chaos or starve it. Only one preserves power. As you master calm, something else happens. People stop predicting you. They don't know how you'll respond. They don't know what will trigger you. They don't know how to pull you off center. That uncertainty protects you, and protection becomes authority. You've learned to control reaction. You've learned to observe. You've slowed emotional speed. You've used silence. You've chosen selectively. You've delayed responses. You've mastered ego. You've embraced calm. Now there's one final advantage that emerges naturally. When you are calm, quiet, and controlled, you become unreadable, and unreadable people cannot be manipulated. You mastered chaos. Now it's time to master mystery. Predictable reactions make you easy to manipulate. That's not opinion. That's strategy. When people can predict you, they can steer you. When they know what triggers you, they can pull you. When they know your next move, they can block it. Unreadable people change the game. They create hesitation. They create uncertainty. And uncertainty shifts power. That's the key. They don't know my next move. Say it again. They don't know my next move. Strong people are not chaotic. They are controlled and unpredictable. Weak people are emotional and obvious. You have a choice. Be transparent with your reactions, or be intentional with what you reveal. Only one protects you. Predictability is comfort. Comfort is vulnerability. Every habit of reaction becomes a handle others can grab. You laugh at the same jokes. You get angry at the same triggers. You respond instantly in the same ways. And soon people stop respecting you and start managing you. That's the danger. Unreadable people don't give patterns easily. They vary response time. They vary expression. They vary engagement, not randomly, deliberately. That's discipline. It's not about being mysterious. It's about being controlled. Say it clearly. It's not about mystery. It's about discipline. That's the key. When others don't know how you'll respond, they hesitate. They choose words more carefully. They think twice before provoking. They slow down around you. Hesitation creates leverage, because while they hesitate, you observe. They don't know my next move. Unreadable does not mean cold. It means neutral. Neutrality is powerful. It gives nothing away. It invites projection. It exposes intention. People reveal themselves when they can't read you. They test. They poke. They escalate. And every test gives you information. You don't need their permission to reveal less. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to stay neutral. Neutrality is not weakness. It's containment. Most people overshare emotionally. They show excitement. They show frustration. They show disappointment. And in doing so, they reveal leverage points. Unreadable people feel internally, but reveal selectively. That selectivity is power. That's the key. Now let's get practical. Stop reacting the same way every time. If you always respond immediately, delay sometimes. If you always explain, say less. If you always joke, stay neutral. You are breaking patterns, and broken patterns confuse manipulation. Confusion creates space. Space creates control. They don't know my next move. Strong people are consistent in values, but flexible in expression. They don't change who they are. They change what they show. That's discipline. Weak people show everything. Strong people reveal only what serves. It's not about hiding. It's about choosing. Say it again. It's not about hiding. It's about choosing. When you become unreadable, your presence changes. People watch you more closely. They seek cues, they wait for signals, and when people wait on you, you lead. Unreadable people don't chase, they attract. They don't force respect. They create gravity. The gravity comes from uncertainty, not fear, not intimidation. Uncertainty, that's the key. When others can't predict your reaction, they cannot rush you, they cannot manipulate timing, they cannot corner you emotionally. You have a choice. Be predictable and comfortable, or unreadable and powerful. Only one keeps you safe. Unreadable people also protect themselves internally. They don't over-identify with emotion. They don't let mood dictate behavior. They don't wear feelings on their face. That internal separation is mastery, because manipulation works only when emotion is visible. When emotion is hidden, manipulation fails. They don't know my next move. Practice this daily. In conversations, respond slightly slower than expected. In conflict, lower expression instead of escalating. In decision-making, keep intent private. You don't owe transparency to everyone. You don't need their permission to move quietly. You don't need their permission to think privately. You don't need their permission to act without announcement. Announcements invite interference. Unreadable people move silently, and silence multiplies impact. That's the key. Now understand this. Being unreadable is not a mask. It's discipline in expression. You're not pretending, you're regulating. And regulation is strength. When you master unreadability, others adapt to you. They slow down, they second guess, they hesitate. That hesitation gives you the advantage. You see more. You decide better, you act cleaner. You've learned to control reaction. You've learned observation. You've slowed emotional speed. You've used silence. You've become selective. You've delayed responses. You've mastered ego. You've embraced calm. Now you are unreadable. The final step is independence, because unreadable people are not just hard to manipulate. They are emotionally self-governing. They don't depend on others to regulate mood or state. That's true strength. You mastered mystery. Now it's time to master autonomy. When your mood depends on others, you are owned. Read that again. When your mood depends on others, you are owned. Most people don't realize they are being controlled emotionally every day. A comment lifts them. A look drops them. A message decides their mood. That's not sensitivity. That's dependency. And dependency is weakness. My state is mine. Say it again. My state is mine. True strength begins here. Observers regulate themselves internally. They don't outsource emotional control. They don't hand their inner world to external events. That's the key. You have a choice. Let the world dictate your state, or decide it yourself. Only one is freedom. Weak people ride emotional waves. Strong people build emotional foundations. It's not about having fewer emotions, it's about having more control. Say it clearly. It's not about being emotionless, it's about being disciplined. That's the key. When your mood depends on praise, you chase validation. When it depends on approval, you seek permission. When it depends on reaction, you surrender power. Emotional independence breaks all of that. You don't need their permission to feel calm. You don't need their permission to feel confident. You don't need their permission to feel steady. Your inner state is not a democracy. It's a command. My state is mine. Strong people don't ask, how do I feel right now? They ask, what state serves me? That question changes behavior. Feeling angry might be natural. Acting on it is optional. Feeling insecure might happen. Obeying it is a choice. You have a choice. React emotionally or regulate intentionally. That's the key. Now let's be practical. Emotional independence is trained. You train it by noticing triggers without obeying them. by feeling emotion without expressing it immediately, by choosing response instead of impulse. Every time you pause, you strengthen control. Every time you choose your state, you reclaim ownership. Weak people need conditions to feel good. Strong people create their own conditions. That's the difference. It's not about comfort, it's about discipline. Say it again. It's not about comfort, it's about discipline. Observers regulate themselves internally. They don't need others to calm them. They don't need chaos to energize them. They don't need drama to feel alive. They are steady. And steadiness is intimidating, because steady people cannot be shaken. My state is mine. Most manipulation works by hijacking emotion. Pressure creates anxiety. Criticism creates anger. Silence creates insecurity. But emotional independence blocks all of it, because when your state is self-regulated, external pressure fails. People can push, but you don't move. They can provoke, but you don't move. They can bore, but you don't chase. That's freedom. You don't need their permission to remain centered. You don't need their permission to feel neutral. You don't need their permission to detach. Detachment is not apathy. Detachment is clarity. That's the key. Now listen carefully. Emotional independence does not mean isolation. It means internal authority. You still connect. You still care. You just don't collapse. You don't let mood swing with circumstances. You decide. And decision is power. My state is mine. Practice this. When something triggers you, don't change behavior immediately. Hold your posture. Slow your breath. Lower expression. Say nothing if needed. Let the emotion pass. Emotions always pass. Control remains. Weak people let emotions drive them. Strong people let emotions pass through them. That's the difference. And it compounds daily. You become calmer, more focused, more unreadable. People stop trying to control your mood because it doesn't work. That's authority. You've learned to control reaction. You've learned to observe. You've slowed emotional speed. You've used silence. You've chosen selectively. You've delayed responses. You've mastered ego. You've embraced calm. You become unreadable. Now you are emotionally independent. But there's one final step. Independence creates capacity. Capacity to decide once, to move fully, to commit without hesitation. Because when emotion no longer controls you, decision becomes clean. That is the final level. You mastered your inner state. Now it's time to master execution. Weak people make many emotional moves. Strong people make few irreversible decisions. That difference decides outcomes. Most people stay busy but go nowhere. They adjust constantly. They react daily. They change direction emotionally. Motion without direction. Activity without commitment. That's weakness disguised as effort. Strong people move differently. They observe first. They decide once. And when they move fully. That's the key. One decision. Full commitment. Say it again. One decision. Full commitment. Weak people keep options open because they fear being wrong. Strong people close options because they trust discipline. You have a choice. You can keep reacting, adjusting, and second-guessing, or you can decide cleanly and commit completely. Only one creates power. Observation comes first. Strong people do not rush decisions. They study patterns. They measure risk. They assess timing. They observe without emotional attachment. Weak people decide while emotional. Strong people decide while calm. That's the key. Emotion clouds judgment. Observation clears it. You don't need their permission to take time deciding. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to wait until you see clearly. Decision made under pressure is rarely strong. Decision made under clarity is stable. Once strong people decide, they stop negotiating with themselves. No hesitation. No retreat. No emotional backtracking. They move fully. One decision. Full commitment. Weak people keep changing because they never fully decided. Strong people stay consistent because the decision was real. This is why weak people exhaust themselves. They start, they stop, they restart, they adjust emotionally. Every change leaks energy. Strong people conserve energy by committing once. It's not about flexibility. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about flexibility. It's about discipline. That's the key. Look at your own life. How many times have you half decided? How many times have you kept one foot out? How many times have you prepared for retreat? That's emotional protection, not strength. Strong people accept the risk of commitment. They understand something most people avoid. Power requires irreversibility. When there is no exit planned, effort intensifies. Focus sharpens. Execution improves. Because there is no escape, one decision. Full commitment. Weak people want guarantees before moving. Strong people move knowing guarantees don't exist. That's courage built on discipline, not emotion. You have a choice: delay decision endlessly, or decide once and align everything behind it. Only one builds momentum. Once the decision is made, strong people stop thinking about alternatives. They don't revisit. They don't emotionally renegotiate. They don't seek reassurance. They execute. Execution is where authority shows. Observation gives clarity. Decision gives direction. Commitment gives force. That sequence is non-negotiable. Break it, and you stay average. That's the key. Now let's get practical. Before any major move, do this. Observe longer than feels comfortable. Remove emotion from evaluation. Write the decision down. Once written, commit. No daily redeciding. No emotional checking. No second guessing. Adjust tactics, not direction. Weak people change direction. Strong people adjust execution. Say it again. Weak people change direction. Strong people adjust execution. That's discipline. You don't need their permission to commit fully. You don't need their permission to ignore doubt. You don't need their permission to move forward without consensus. Most people ask too many opinions after deciding. That's fear. Strong people ask opinions before deciding and ignore noise after. That's the key. Commitment also makes you unreadable. People can't pull you emotionally once you've decided. They can't distract you with doubt. They can't slow you with opinions, because the decision is done. One decision. Full commitment. Strong people don't dabble. They don't test half-heartedly. They don't move cautiously after deciding. They go all in, and all-in energy changes results. Weak people hedge emotionally. Strong people commit behaviorally. That's the difference. When you commit fully, people feel it. They stop testing you. They stop doubting you. They adjust to your certainty. Certainty creates gravity. That gravity pulls opportunity. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. Say it again. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. Now understand this. Commitment does not mean stubbornness. It means integrity with your decision. If new information truly changes the landscape, reassess. But don't let emotion pretend to be information. Emotion lies, patterns don't. That's the key. You've learned to observe instead of react. You've learned to control emotion. You've learned to stay calm, silent, unreadable, independent. Now you've learned execution. Observe first. Decide once. Move fully. This is how strong people live. Few decisions. Deep commitment. Clean execution. And once you live this way, something changes. You stop chasing outcomes. Outcomes start aligning with you. Because the world responds to decisiveness. You mastered control. You mastered clarity. You mastered commitment. Now there's only one thing left. Becoming the calm center others react around. because when you move with certainty and restraint, the world adjusts to you. That is leadership. That is authority. Pain is inevitable. Waste is optional. Most people experience pain and immediately react. They lash out. They shut down. They repeat the same behavior with new excuses. That's why their life doesn't change. Because pain, when reacted to, becomes damage. But pain, when observed, becomes data. That's the key. Every insult, every failure, every rejection, every setback, all of it carries information. Reactive people feel pain and want it to stop. Observers feel pain and want to understand it. That single difference separates growth from repetition. Pain is tuition, learn the lesson. Say it again. Pain is tuition, learn the lesson. Life charges everyone. Some people pay and learn. Others pay and repeat. You have a choice. Turn pain into emotion or turn pain into strategy. Only one builds power. Reactive people personalize pain. They ask, why is this happening to me? They spiral into blame, anger, or self-pity. Observers depersonalize pain. They ask, what is this teaching me? That question changes everything. It's not about fairness, it's about feedback. Say it clearly. It's not about fairness, it's about feedback. That's the key. Failure is not an identity. Failure is information. Rejection is not a verdict. Rejection is not a verdict. Instruction is direction. Insults are not truth. They are signals about others or about blind spots. But only if you observe. When you react emotionally, you miss the lesson. When you observe calmly, you extract it. Pain is tuition, learn the lesson. Most people repeat mistakes because they never slow down enough to analyze. They jump back in. They rush to prove. They act from emotion again, and then they wonder why the outcome is the same. Strong people don't rush pain away. They sit with it, not to suffer, but to study. That's discipline. You don't need their permission to pause after a loss. You don't need their permission to reflect. You don't need their permission to change tactics. Pain is not a command to react. It's an invitation to observe. That's the key. Observers treat pain like a debrief. What happened? What did I miss? Where did emotion override judgment? What pattern is repeating? These questions turn pain into progress. Reactive people ask, who's at fault? Observers ask, what's the pattern? Patterns are power. Once you see a pattern, you can break it. Once you break it, pain stops repeating. That's how strength compounds. Pain is tuition, learn the lesson. This applies everywhere. In relationships, pain reveals boundaries you ignored. In business, pain reveals risks you underestimated. In life, pain reveals discipline you lacked. None of that is punishment. It's instruction. But instruction only works if you listen. You have a choice. Use pain as proof you're unlucky, or use pain as evidence you're learning. Only one builds resilience. Reactive people numb pain. Observers process it. Numbing delays growth. Processing accelerates it. It's not about being tough. It's about being intelligent. Say it again. It's not about being tough. It's about being intelligent. That's the key. Now let's get practical. The next time something hurts, emotionally or professionally, do not act immediately. No messages, no confrontations, no decisions. Instead, write. What happened? What was in my control? What wasn't? What will I do differently next time? This turns pain into a playbook. Weak people forget pain once it fades. Strong people extract lessons before it fades, because forgotten pain returns. Learned pain upgrades you. Pain is tuition, learn the lesson. This is why observers evolve faster. They don't need life to hit them 10 times. Once is enough. Reactive people need repetition. Observers need clarity. And clarity shortens suffering. You don't need their permission to learn quietly. You don't need their permission to grow privately. You don't need their permission to stop repeating old cycles. Growth is internal before it's visible. Pain also strips illusions. It shows you where ego lied, where confidence was fake, where preparation was missing. That exposure hurts, but it also frees you, because illusions cost more than pain ever will. That's the key. Strong people respect pain, not emotionally. Strategically, they know pain arrives to sharpen them, not destroy them. And once you understand that, pain loses its control over you. You stop fearing it, you stop running from it, you start using it. That's mastery. Pain is tuition. Learn the lesson. When you do this consistently, something powerful happens. You stop repeating the same mistakes. You stop attracting the same outcomes. You stop blaming the same people. Your tactics improve. Your awareness sharpens. Your reactions disappear. Because reaction is ignorance. Observation is intelligence. You've learned to observe people. You've learned to observe emotion. Now you've learned to observe pain. This completes the triangle. And when you can observe pain without reacting, nothing in life can break you. It can only teach you. You mastered reaction. You mastered observation. You mastered learning. Now it's time to talk about timing. Because knowing the lesson is not enough. You must know when to apply it. And timing is where most people fail. Respect does not come from force. It comes from stability. The world does not respect who shouts the loudest. It respects who remains standing when pressure arrives. People respect what they cannot shake. That's the truth most never learn. Consistency, restraint, emotional gravity. These are the currencies of real respect. Unshaken people are unignorable. Say it again. Unshaken people are unignorable. Most people chase respect by reacting harder. They argue, they defend, they escalate, and every reaction makes them smaller. Because reaction signals vulnerability. When someone can shake you, they don't respect you. They manage you. That's the key. The less you react, the more seriously you are taken. Not because you demand it, but because your emotional center doesn't move. You have a choice: react to prove strength, or remain steady and let strength reveal itself. Only one works. Weak people seek respect externally. Strong people generate it internally. Respect is a byproduct of control. Say it clearly. It's not about dominance. It's about discipline. That's the key. Look at who people listen to in tense situations. Not the emotional one. Not the frantic one. Not the reactive one. They listen to the calm presence. Why? Because calm signals certainty. Certainty signals authority, and authority attracts respect. Unshaken people are unignorable. When you remain steady, others adjust their behavior around you. They choose words more carefully. They hesitate before provoking. They slow down because they sense something solid. Not arrogance, not intimidation, gravity. Emotional gravity pulls attention without effort. That gravity comes from restraint. You don't need their permission to stay composed. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need their permission to refuse escalation. Escalation is weakness pretending to be strength. Restraint is strength that doesn't need to announce itself. That's the key. People test emotional boundaries instinctively. They poke, they pressure, they provoke. Not consciously, instinctively. They want to see if you move. If you react, they learn they can shake you. If you remain steady, they stop testing. Because resistance with no movement frustrates manipulation. That's power. Unshaken people are unignorable. This is why consistency matters, not mood-based behavior, not situational strength. Consistency. When your response stays the same regardless of pressure, People stop gambling with your reactions. They respect predictability of discipline, not emotion. Weak people are predictable emotionally. Strong people are predictable in restraint. That's the difference. You have a choice. Be emotionally expressive or emotionally grounded. Only one builds respect. Now understand this carefully. Respect is not loud. It's quiet recognition. It's when people listen without being told, when they stop interrupting, when they wait for your response. That doesn't come from asserting yourself. It comes from being unshakable. Say it again. Unshakable. That's the key. In professional life, emotional steadiness builds credibility. In personal life, it builds boundaries. In leadership, it builds loyalty. Because people trust what doesn't fluctuate. They trust what doesn't panic. They trust what doesn't explode. They trust what doesn't beg for validation. Hashtagging people are unignorable. Hashtags. Now let's get practical. The next time someone tries to provoke you, do less. No explanation, no defense, no emotional shift. Hold posture, hold tone, hold timing. Let the moment pass. Moments always pass. Respect accumulates. Weak people try to win moments. Strong people win patterns. Say it clearly. Weak people win moments. Strong people win patterns. That's discipline. You don't need their permission to disengage emotionally. You don't need their permission to remain neutral. You don't need their permission to let silence stand. Silence backed by control is louder than reaction ever will be. People notice. They always do. And once noticed, respect grows, because the world is chaotic, and anything stable inside chaos stands out. That's gravity. Now understand something important. Being unshaken does not mean being passive. It means your response is deliberate. When you act, it's clean. When you speak, it's precise. When you decide, it's final. Because you were not rushed into it. That's why unshaken people are feared quietly and respected openly. They don't waste energy. They don't repeat themselves. They don't explain unnecessarily. They move with weight. Unshaken people are unignorable. This is the result of everything you've trained. Observation, delay, silence, calm, unreadability, emotional independence. All of it produces this outcome. You cannot be shaken. And once you cannot be shaken, you cannot be ignored. The world adjusts to what it cannot move. That is a law, not motivation, not philosophy, a law. You have a choice: live reactively and be managed, or live steadily and be respected. Only one leads to authority, and authority is not given. It emerges quietly, naturally, inevitably, because the world respects what it cannot shake. You are no longer reactive. You are no longer emotional. You are no longer rushed. You are steady. And steady people change rooms without trying. Now there is only one thing left: to seal this into a daily rule, to turn this discipline into a lifelong standard, because knowledge without application fades. And the final step is action. When you stop reacting, others orbit your frame. Read that again. When you stop reacting, others orbit your frame. This is the final shift. This is where everything you've learned converges. Up to now, you've been training control. Now you step into gravity. Leadership does not begin with authority. Authority begins with emotional control. And emotional control creates presence. That's the key. Most people think leaders assert themselves. They don't. Leaders stabilize the environment. Chaos adjusts to them. Emotion settles around them. People mirror their state. That's real leadership. I am the reference point. Say it again. I am the reference point. When you are calm under pressure, people look to you. When you don't react emotionally, people adjust behavior. When you don't rush, others slow down. Because humans subconsciously seek stability. And the calmest person in the room becomes the anchor. You have a choice. Chase attention or become gravity. Only one lasts. Weak people demand control. Strong people attract it. They don't force influence. They radiate it. It's not about dominance. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about dominance. It's about discipline. That's the key. When you stop reacting, something subtle happens. People begin to self-correct around you. They explain themselves more carefully. They hesitate before escalating, not because you threaten them, but because your calm creates contrast. Their emotion feels exposed next to your control, and no one likes feeling exposed. So they adjust. That's power. I am the reference point. This is why leaders speak less. Why they don't rush decisions. Why they don't rush decisions. Why they don't chase validation. They don't need to. The environment is already reacting to them. You don't need their permission to set the emotional tone. You don't need their permission to stay composed. You don't need their permission to be the calmest presence. Calm is contagious, but only when it's real. Fake calm cracks. Trained calm holds. That's discipline. Now let's talk behavior. When something goes wrong, don't escalate. Stabilize. When emotions rise, don't absorb them. Anchor. When pressure increases, don't speed up. Slow down. That reversal is leadership. Weak people amplify chaos. Strong people absorb it and neutralize it. It's not about solving everything. It's about holding the center. Say it again. It's not about solving everything. It's about holding the center. That's the key. When you hold the center, others move around you. They seek approval. They wait for cues. They mirror your posture. Because humans synchronize emotionally, and the strongest emotional signal wins. Calm beats chaos. Always. I am the reference point. Notice this in real life. In emergencies, people follow the calm voice. In conflict, people listen to the steady one. In groups, people orient toward emotional stability. Not charisma, not aggression. Stability. That's leadership stripped of ego. This is why you were trained to delay, to observe, to regulate emotion, to become unreadable. All of it was preparation for this moment. Because once you are calm, selective, disciplined, and internally regulated, you no longer react to the world. The world reacts to you. That's the shift. You have a choice. Be affected by environments, or become the environment others adjust to. Only one is power. This also means responsibility. When you are the reference point, your state matters. If you panic, panic spreads. If you rush, urgency multiplies. If you stay grounded, stability spreads. So you guard your state fiercely. You protect it. Because your state now shapes outcomes. I am the reference point. This is not arrogance. This is containment. You are not above others. You are centered. And centered people lead naturally. They don't announce leadership. They embody it. That's the key. Let's lock this in. Leadership is not loud. Leadership is not reactive. Leadership is not emotional. Leadership is composed. It's not about control. It's about discipline. Say it again. It's not about control. It's about discipline. Now look at how far you've come. You stopped reacting. You learned to observe. You slowed emotional speed. You used silence. You became selective. You delayed. You mastered ego. You embraced calm. You became unreadable. You claimed emotional independence. You decided once and committed fully. All of that was training you to become this, the calm others react to. This is not a personality. It's a standard, and standards don't fluctuate. They hold. I am the reference point. Make that your final identity, not dominant, Not aggressive, not reactive. Centered, controlled, unshakable. Because when you are the calmest person in the room, you don't need to chase power. Power organizes itself around you. And now, there's only one thing left. To seal this discipline into your daily life. To turn insight into habit. To turn control into identity. This is where everything becomes permanent. Remember this clearly. Every time you react without thinking, you surrender power. Every time you pause, observe, and choose, you reclaim it. The weak chase relief. The strong build control. From this moment forward, slow down your emotions. Watch before you speak. Listen before you move. Let others reveal themselves while you remain grounded. Do not announce your strength. Demonstrate it through restraint. Your challenge is simple. For the next 30 days, react to nothing instantly. Observe. Decide. Act with purpose. And watch how the world adjusts to you.